My husband saw my name tattooed on a coworker's arm. During a beach outing, he left everyone shocked. I don't even know how to start this honestly. I've written and deleted this post like 10 times already because every version either sounds like I'm making excuses or like I'm begging for pity, and I'm not trying to do either. I just don't know what I'm trying to do. My life has basically been turned upside down and destroyed, and it's all my fault. I made a mistake. A huge one. I got caught up in something I should never have let happen. I didn't think before acting. I didn't think about what it would cost. I got caught up in an affair. So yeah, throwaway account for obvious reasons. My now ex-husband Chris and I were together for 13 years, married for 10. We have 2 kids both in middle school. On paper, we were fine. We owned no major debt, a great neighborhood, family trips every summer, Christmas photos on the fridge, the whole picture-perfect cliche. Chris earned well, really well, like 7 times my salary kind of well. I worked in marketing for a mid-sized company, nothing fancy, but I liked it. It made me feel like I had my own space. The bills were always paid, the kids had what they needed. We weren't struggling, if anything, life was just stable. But that was the thing. It was too predictable and quiet. I know some people want that, but it just became too stale. I'm not here to sugarcoat what I did. I messed up. I really, really messed up. At some point, I honestly don't even know when exactly, but the marriage just became stale. I mean, we'd been married for 10 years, together for 13. That's a long-ass time to be with one person. Life just became a cycle. Wake up, help the kids get ready, work, come home, dinner, bedtime. Maybe scroll through our phones next to each other in silence, then sleep. Repeat. We barely had date nights anymore, and the few times we actually did have them, it was almost always the same thing. Restaurants, same conversations, same, how was your day, same everything. I know how awful that sounds, trust me. I know people roll their eyes when they hear someone say, things got boring, like it's some kind of excuse. But until you've lived it, you can't really understand it. And no, I'm not saying that to justify what I did, I'm not. I hate that I even sound like I'm trying to, but I'm being honest, it felt like I was living the same day over and over and over again. And I feel disgusting even typing this, because if I could go back now, I'd give anything to relive those boring days. I'd give anything to wake up next to Chris, to hear the kids bickering over cereal again, to just have another normal, repetitive, peaceful day. But back then, I couldn't see it for what it was. I thought I was trapped, and then Evan came along. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. Evan was a coworker. We worked on a project together, so naturally we spent hours side by side. And when you spend that much time with someone, something changes. Little things start to happen. Inside jokes, casual smiles that last a second too long, the occasional lunch that turns into an after-work drink, just to talk about the project. Evan wasn't this crazy, charming, movie-perfect guy. There was nothing spectacular about him, not really. Looking back, I can say that now. He was just easy. He was a little charismatic. He was funny. But that was it. That was literally all it took. It didn't matter that he wasn't better than Chris in any way. Not in looks, not in kindness, not in stability. What mattered back then was that he was new. It was reckless. It was pathetic. It was completely unlike me. There wasn't a single thing wrong with my life until I made it wrong. Chris didn't do anything wrong. Like, not a single thing. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't distant in that cold, heartless way. He was just tired. Work consumed him. Then the kids, then bills, then sleep. Every conversation became logistical. What's for dinner? Did you pay that bill? Who's picking up the kids tomorrow? It felt like every word we exchanged was just part of some long, boring to-do list. I knew he still loved me. I knew that. But I was bored. Not unloved, not abused, just bored. Which is probably the saddest reason to blow up your own life, but here we are. Evan and I were just friends at first. Honestly, it was nice having someone who didn't know every single corner of my life, who didn't know Chris, the kids, my routines. At first, it really was innocent. Friendly banter during meetings, coffee runs where we'd complain about deadlines, harmless text messages about work stuff. But then, it crept up. Evan could be a flirt, not in a gross way, just a light, teasing way that made you laugh before you even thought twice. He'd throw in little compliments that made me feel good. You look nice today. You're seriously the only person who makes these meetings tolerable. Stuff like that. And I liked it. Then came lunches. At first, I told myself it was just two colleagues grabbing food, but I started looking forward to them way too much. We'd talk about everything. It felt easy. Then came the late night texts, then calls. We'd talk until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. sometimes. I'd sneak out of the living room or sit in the bathroom so Chris wouldn't hear me. I told myself it was just conversation, but it wasn't. It was emotional cheating, and I knew it. Then the first time it actually happened, I cried. We were in a hotel, out of town for some conference, and one thing led to another. I told him it couldn't happen again. I said I loved my husband, that it was a mistake. I remember crying so hard I could barely look at him. He just held me and said he understood, but that he couldn't stay away from me, and I believed him. I was so stupid. He didn't care about me the way I wanted to believe he did, but I held on to the idea because it made me feel wanted again. And even though I said it wouldn't happen again, it did. After that first time, I tried avoiding him. I really did. I felt so disgusting, so guilty. There was even a moment where I thought about telling Chris everything, just blurting it out and taking whatever came next, but I couldn't, because I knew what Chris's reaction would be. Cheating was a deal breaker for him, always had been, so I stayed quiet. I tried to avoid Evan, but the guilt turned into emptiness, and that emptiness made me miss him even more. And then second hotel, then a third, then business trips that weren't really business trips. Before I even realized it, we were having a full-blown affair. Weeks turned into months of sneaking around and lying to Chris. The affair went on for months. It just became something I couldn't stop. It wasn't supposed to get that deep, but it did. So how did Evan end up getting a tattoo of my name? Honestly, it started out as a dumb joke. We were texting one night, and I mentioned that I'd always wanted to get tattoos, like real ones, not the little temporary ones I used to draw on my skin back in college. But then I got pregnant, and life just shifted. I shoved the idea to the back of my mind and never went through with it. Evan was teasing me, saying he'd never get a tattoo because he was scared of needles. So I told him to just start small, like a tiny symbol or something. I said he could get a little piece first, something quick and easy, and if he liked it, he could go bigger later. And then because I was such an idiot, I joked that he could get my name. It was a joke, okay? But Evan, being Evan, laughed and said, "Yeah, maybe I'll do that." And before I knew it, that little joke had somehow turned into a real thing. Next thing, he sent me a picture of his arm, and there it was, my name, inked in black just below his bicep. My first reaction? I thought it was sweet. Not smart, just sweet. I didn't think about consequences, didn't think about what that could mean. I didn't think that far ahead. I just thought, wow, that's kind of romantic. I was so stupid. I even took a picture of it on my phone. I didn't post it or anything, but I looked at it sometimes and felt this twisted kind of happiness. And even though I felt guilty, I was also happy and reckless. Then came the company trip. About a month before it happened, the office announced this big team bonding weekend at some fancy beach resort. You know, all that cheesy corporate stuff, bonfires, cocktails, trust games. HR's idea of morale building. Spouses were invited, which sounded nice on paper, except it made my stomach twist because Evan would be there. I didn't want to invite Chris. I would have rather spent that weekend with Evan, like we always did when we could sneak away. But I couldn't not invite Chris. What if he found out later? What excuse could I possibly have? Everyone else was bringing their partners. It would have looked weird if I didn't even mention it. So I told him, trying to sound casual. "It's mostly a work thing," I said. "You probably wouldn't enjoy it. You know how awkward those team-building games get." Chris just looked at me, raised an eyebrow, and said, "You think I'd pass up a free beach weekend?" And that was that. He was coming. I was panicking. The entire lead up to the trip, my stomach was in knots. It felt like walking into a trap I set for myself. What if Evan looked at me too long? What if someone made a joke? What if I slipped? The first day was fine, weirdly fine. Chris was in his element, chatting with my coworkers, helping with the grill, making everyone laugh. I caught Evan glancing at me a few times, but we kept it professional, small talk, polite smiles, nothing that would draw attention. And for a minute, I actually thought, maybe we'll get through this weekend without any disasters. After lunch, everyone started drifting toward the water. The sun was hot, people were laughing, music was playing. I was sitting in a beach chair, pretending to relax, sipping a drink while watching Chris toss a frisbee with some of the guys. And then Evan walked over. He was sunburned, grinning completely carefree. He said something to one of the guys, then laughed and pulled off his t-shirt. And there it was, my name clear as day, in clean black script across the inside of his arm, just below the bicep. Not small, not hidden, big enough that anyone standing nearby could read it without even squinting. I swear the world stopped spinning. The sound of laughter faded. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, "Wait, is that—" Evan froze too late. He looked at me, panic flashing across his face, and awkwardly tried to laugh it off, scratching the back of his neck like it was some dumb coincidence. And right then, because the universe has a sixth sense of humor, Chris walked up. Everyone went silent. Chris's eyes flicked down to Evan's arm. He looked right at it, then back up at Evan. No dramatic reaction, no anger, nothing. Just this calm, polite smile. "Nice ink," he said casually. He reached into the cooler beside him, pulled out a beer, cracked it open, and handed it to Evan. "You must really love whoever Sophie is." Everyone was shocked. The silence was suffocating. A few people let out these awkward little laughs. Evan tried to say something, but Chris just clinked his bottle against Evan's and said, "To Sophie, then," before taking a sip and walking away like nothing happened. And that was it. No scene, no yelling, no confrontation like everyone had expected. Just calm. Everyone else was tense and awkward for the rest of the afternoon. I could feel eyes on me, whispers behind me. Meanwhile, Chris was acting completely normal, still laughing with people, still joking, still charming, like nothing had happened. I sat there frozen, pretending to sip my drink, every nerve in my body on fire, and even when we got home, he still didn't mention it. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. He acted completely normal, kissed the kids goodnight, watched TV, made dinner plans for the week. I should have known then, I should have seen it, but I didn't. I told myself maybe he hadn't thought much of it. Maybe he figured Evan knew someone else named Sophie. Maybe he brushed it off as a coincidence. For the first few days after the beach trip, I kept waiting for it, the explosion, the yelling, the accusations, the questions, the cold shoulder, something, but none of that came. Chris woke up the next morning like it was any other day. He made breakfast for the kids, kissed my forehead like he always did, asked if I wanted coffee. He packed lunches, joked with our son about forgetting his shoes again, and went about his day like absolutely nothing had happened. That night, he asked if I wanted Chinese or pizza for dinner, just like that, like we hadn't stood on a beach with 20 people who all saw another man's arm inked with my name. And honestly, that made it worse, because there was no way he didn't see it. Everyone saw it. You can't unsee something like that, your wife's name tattooed in bold black letters on another man's arm, but he never brought it up. Not once. Not even when we were alone. I tried to convince myself maybe he hadn't connected the dots. Maybe he thought it was some weird coincidence. Maybe Evan had some cousin or old friend named Sophie or something. Evan seemed to think so too. He laughed it off when we texted about it later, said Chris didn't look like he suspected anything. He even sent a stupid meme about dodging bullets and said we were fine. But me, I wasn't so sure. Because Chris isn't stupid. He's not the kind of man who misses details. He's the kind of man who notices when the cereal boxes move 2 inches on the counter, when the thermostat changes by a single degree. He's observant. And we've been together for 13 years, so I would know that. Still, I couldn't see anything wrong. He did nothing out of the ordinary. He didn't stop sleeping in our bed. He didn't move to the guest room. He didn't even act distant. It was like living in a perfectly staged house, where every item is in its place, except, someone's been moving things when you weren't looking. I even tried a couple of times to test the waters. Just tiny things. Are you okay? Has work been rough lately? You've been quiet lately. Every single time he'd just smile, that calm, easy smile. Just tired, he'd say. Work's work. And that was it. He started focusing more on the kids too, picking them up from school himself, packing their lunches, helping with homework, planning weekend trips, signing up for every parent-teacher meeting, every recital, every soccer game. At the time, I thought it was sweet. He'd always been a really hands-on dad, so seeing him even more involved didn't raise red flags for me. If anything, it made me feel guilty, like he was the better parent, the better person. But now I know better. Now I can see that it wasn't just sweet. It was deliberate. Still back then, I told myself to calm down. I told myself I was overthinking because of my guilt. I started seeing Evan less too. I told him my husband was getting suspicious. I lied, said I wanted to spend more time with my family to throw him off. The truth was, I just couldn't stomach it anymore. Every kiss, every text, every I miss you felt like sandpaper against my chest. Then it started with the mail. Just small things at first, a few envelopes addressed to Chris from law firms I didn't recognize. I didn't think much of it because, honestly, his job sometimes involved contracts, consultants, random legal documents. It wasn't weird, not at first. But then there were more. Neat, heavy envelopes, the kind with those thick, expensive papers and printed seals that look way too serious for everyday life. And I started noticing something. He'd always get to them first, like clockwork. The mail would come in, and he'd appear out of nowhere, grab the stack, sort through it quickly, and slip a few into the inside pocket of his jacket before heading upstairs to his office. No explanation, no hesitation. Then came the calls. At first I brushed them off. He had a stressful job, people called at all hours. But then the tone shifted. He'd step outside or into his office, close the door behind him, and lower his voice. One day he forgot to close the door completely, and I heard it. Just a few words, but they landed like a slap. Full custody. Financial disclosures. My body went still, like my brain hadn't even caught up yet, but my stomach already knew. I backed away before he noticed, quietly, heart pounding. After that, I couldn't unsee it. Every small thing, every polite smile, it all started to make sense in the worst way possible. He was preparing. He started cleaning out his office, not in a decluttering way, but in an organized, methodical way. He labeled folders, scanned papers. I saw him pull out old tax returns, our mortgage paperwork, bank statements, even the deed to the house. Then one afternoon, I went to check our joint account because I needed to make a grocery transfer. And that's when I noticed the balance was lower. Not dramatically, not enough to set off alarm bells. But for someone watching closely, it was obvious. So I checked the statements. There were transfers, small, consistent ones to a new account under his name only. That was the first time I truly panicked. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. I wanted to ask him, but what would I even say? Hey, are you quietly preparing to divorce me because you found out I destroyed our marriage, and you're just waiting for the perfect moment to take everything? I tried to act normal after that. I really did. But my body didn't remember how. Every word came out wrong. And he noticed. Of course he did. Chris was always observant. He'd just look at me with that calm expression, like he could see right through the act, but wasn't going to help me stop pretending. Then the kids started saying little things. Mom, are we really going to stay here if you and Daddy don't live together? Daddy said he's talking to a lawyer friend about grown-up stuff. Daddy said we might spend more time with him soon. I swear my blood went cold. I confronted him that night, or at least I tried to. Chris, what are you telling the kids? I asked, trying to sound steady, failing completely. He didn't even look up right away. Nothing untrue, he said. That sentence hit me like a freight train. Are you... I could barely form the words. Are you planning something? He finally looked at me then. Sophie, he said, voice level. I've been planning nothing that you didn't already set in motion. I think I laughed. One of those ugly, dry, nervous laughs. You can't be serious. He stood up, picked up his mug, walked past me toward the kitchen, and said quietly, I'm not going to make a scene. I'm not going to drag you through the mud, but I'm also not going to let you blow up my life and think there won't be consequences. That was it. That was all he said. No shouting, no how could you, no breaking down. Just that same terrifying calm. After that night, everything shifted. He moved into the guest room, quietly, no argument. He didn't take off his wedding ring, but it might as well have been invisible. He was polite, cordial, civil. In front of the kids, he was still the perfect dad, still funny, still gentle, still patient. But with me, he was careful, detached, too kind, even like someone handling a fragile object they no longer wanted, but still had to protect for appearance's sake. At that point, I wasn't even seeing Evan. I'd put a pause on things. Completely. To be honest, I was too stressed, too panicked, too damn anxious to even think straight, let alone sneak around. The affair wasn't exciting anymore. It was just a reminder of everything I stood to lose. I knew a divorce was coming. You don't have to be a genius to read the writing on the wall when your husband suddenly becomes calm and efficient about everything. So I stopped answering Evan's texts, stopped meeting him after work, stopped pretending like any of it made sense. He didn't seem to care that much, which honestly hurt more than I expected. He just shrugged when I told him I needed space. Like that was it. No protest, no guilt, no fight. Just, all right, do what you need. Anyway, I knew it was coming. The divorce. I could feel it breathing down my neck, waiting for the right moment to crush me. And it finally did on a Tuesday night. Just a normal night. Quiet, ordinary. One of those nights where absolutely nothing dramatic should happen. The kids were already in bed. Chris was in his office again, door half closed like always. I don't even know what pushed me over the edge that night. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the fear that had been eating away at me for weeks. Or maybe it was just that deep, sick awareness that pretending everything was fine wasn't going to make it fine. I stood outside his office door for almost a full minute before knocking. No answer. So I pushed the door open anyway. He didn't look surprised to see me, didn't even stop typing. Just glanced up and said flatly, "Do you need something?" I swallowed hard. "I want to talk." "What about?" "Us," I said, and that's when he finally leaned back in his chair and looked at me, really looked at me. "Us." He let out a quiet laugh. "Now you want to talk about us." I panicked. The words started tumbling out before I could stop them. "Chris, please don't do that. Don't make it sound like I didn't care. I made a mistake, okay? A horrible mistake. But we've been together for over a decade. We have kids. This doesn't have to be the end. Please, we can fix this." He cut me off. "You think this is about a mistake, Sophie?" The way he said my name made my stomach twist. "A mistake," he continued, "is forgetting an anniversary, leaving the oven on. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. A series of them, actually." My face was burning. I could feel the tears coming before I even blinked. I tried again, stammering, "I'm sorry, Chris. I swear, I'm so sorry, you have no idea." He didn't even pretend to care. He just rolled his eyes and exhaled slowly. "You think I didn't know?" I froze. "You really think that tattoo at the beach was how I found out?" he said. "You think I would have stood there smiling, handing him a beer, if that was the first time I realized you were sleeping with your coworker?" I couldn't breathe. "I knew months before," he said quietly. "You started acting different, and I started paying attention. It didn't take long." He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on me. "Do you remember the night you said you were working late on that marketing project? The one where you said your phone died and you couldn't answer?" I nodded weakly. "I tracked your location." My knees almost buckled. "I sat in my car outside that hotel," he continued, his voice steady, emotionless. "Watched you walk in with him. Watched you come out the next morning in the same dress you left in." I just stared at him, my mouth open, my heart hammering. "I didn't confront you then because I wanted to see how far you'd go," he said. "How long you'd keep lying to my face." He paused. "And you did it for months." I was crying by then, hard, the kind of crying that makes it hard to breathe. But Chris didn't stop. "I recorded phone calls," he said. "The ones where you told him you loved him. I have the messages, the pictures, all of it." I could barely hear anything after that. My whole body was shaking. "I wanted to be sure," he said, voice lowering. "I wanted to be calm. I didn't want to blow up our life without thinking it through. I wanted to make sure that when I walked away, I did it right. No shouting, no drama, just quiet, clean." My legs gave out. I sat down on the edge of the couch, sobbing. "Please don't do this," I begged. "Please, Chris, I'll do anything. We can fix this. I'll quit my job. I'll go to therapy. I've already cut him off. Please, please." He just watched me cry for a while. No expression, no anger, just that same cold calm. Then he shook his head. "I don't hate you, Sophie," he said quietly. "I just can't see you the same anymore." My throat burned. "The only reason I haven't left yet is because of the kids," he continued. "They deserve peace while I sort things out. I wanted to make sure I got custody before you found out what was coming." My head snapped up. What? Custody, he said simply, like it was a business transaction. I must have looked horrified because he sighed. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'm not going to drag your name through the mud. I'm not going to tell them what you did, but I am going to get full custody. You'll see them, you'll visit, but they'll live here. This is their home. He looked at me for a long moment. You can find your own place once the divorce is official. I couldn't speak, couldn't even process the words. I just sat there, shaking, crying, wishing the ground would open up and swallow me. The weeks after that were brutal. Chris went scorched earth, quietly, methodically, devastatingly. He still wasn't yelling. He wasn't breaking things. He wasn't even being cruel. He was just strategic, calculated in a way I didn't even know he was capable of. I woke up one morning to a forwarded email chain. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw the subject line, disclosure of personal relationship between employees. My stomach dropped. It was an email from Chris sent to HR at my company. A professional message outlining that there was a personal relationship between two employees, me and Evan, which violated the company's no fraternization policy. He attached supporting material, screenshots, photos, timestamps, and because it came from a spouse, not some anonymous rumor, HR had no choice but to treat it as a formal complaint, which meant it had to be documented, which meant they had to investigate. By noon that day, I was being pulled into a conference room. HR faces, the neutral tone, the phrases like policy review, internal investigation, your opportunity to respond. It was humiliating. Everyone in the office knew something was up. I could feel their eyes on me in the break room, the awkward silences when I walked by, people pretending to be busy but clearly whispering. And I couldn't even blame them. If it had been another coworker caught up in a scandal like that, I'd probably have whispered too. A week later, the email came. Termination for cause. No severance, no benefits. Just my final paycheck for the hours I had worked. That was it. Years of work and loyalty all gone. A small, bitter part of me was glad Evan got fired too. Maybe it was twisted, but it felt like poetic justice. After everything, after realizing he never cared half as much as I thought, seeing him lose something too made me feel a little satisfied. But of course it didn't stop there. Chris went further. He told my family, every single one of them. He told them I had cheated, that he'd filed for divorce, that it was fault-based, adultery. So yeah, that was fun. The calls started flooding in, my mom's shaky voice asking why, my sister trying to sound supportive but failing to hide the disappointment in her tone, and my dad, he didn't even call, just sent one text. I'm very disappointed, Sophie. That was it. I sat on my kitchen floor that night, just staring at the wall. It felt like every single part of my life was collapsing at once. Home, job, family, reputation piece by piece. And I couldn't stop it because I had started it. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Evan lost his damn mind. He started sending me long, hateful messages, paragraphs upon paragraphs of blame and insults, accusing me of trying to ruin his life, of getting him fired, of being stupid enough to get caught. He said he should have known better than to mess with a married woman who couldn't even keep her story straight, and he told me the tattoo was temporary. A temporary fucking tattoo. He said he just wanted to mess with me and fuck with my head and get a reaction. That broke something in me. Not because of the tattoo itself, but because of how stupid I had been to believe any of it ever meant something. I blocked him everywhere after that. I didn't want to see his name pop up again. Back at home, things were weird. Chris and I were still under the same roof for the kids' sake, but we might as well have been strangers. He slept in the guest room. I stayed in the master bedroom. We only spoke when necessary about logistics like bills, dinners, the kids' schedules. He had told me he wouldn't tell the kids about the cheating, and he didn't. But he did sit them down one evening and gently explain that we were getting a divorce. He didn't blame me, didn't badmouth me, just said, sometimes parents stop loving each other the same way. I hadn't found the courage to talk to them myself yet. Every time I tried, I froze. The words wouldn't come out. I'd look at their faces and my throat would just close up. They were obviously confused and trying to pretend nothing was wrong. I could barely eat or sleep. I would get in the bathroom, get under the shower, and just cry. This was all my fault. The whole process lasted about 6 months, faster than I thought it would be, because Chris had filed on fault-based grounds. Adultery, we got to skip the usual 1-year waiting period. No counseling, no mediation, no reconciliation attempts. And because it was adultery, I lost everything I might have been entitled to. No alimony, no spousal support. Even though Chris earned nearly 7 times what I did, and I had been the one mainly managing the house, the law was clear. Adultery disqualified me. The judge said it in the driest tone imaginable, like she was reading from a grocery list. Given the proven fault grounds of adultery, the petitioner is not entitled to spousal support. That was it. That was the entire sentence that ended any financial stability I had left. Then came custody, and I already knew how that would go. Chris was the stable one, the higher earner, the parent with the clean record, the home, a support system that actually works, the consistency. He had everything the court looks for, so yeah, he got primary custody. I get the kids every other weekend and sometimes dinner on Wednesdays if he doesn't have work travel. They still hug me tight when they see me. They still call me mommy, but all they talk about are things they do with Dad. Dad took us to the park. Dad's teaching us how to ride our bikes without training wheels. And I can't even be mad. He's a good father, always has been, but it breaks me every single time I have to hand them back. Then there's child support. The court ordered me to pay $200 a month total. It's small, but also surreal. I used to manage everything for our household, and now I'm wiring child support to the man I once built a home with. As for the house, that was gone too. In our state, property division isn't an automatic 50-50. It's based on fairness. And fairness, when one spouse cheats, tilts heavily toward the faithful one. The judge awarded Chris 70% of the marital estate. I got 30%. He bought me out quietly. He refinanced the mortgage, took my name off, had the paperwork couriered to my apartment for signature. Now I rent a small 1-bedroom apartment. Beige walls, peeling paint, thin walls that let in every noise from the neighbors. I also landed a small admin job at a logistics company. It's not glamorous, it is nothing close to what I used to earn, but it covers the bills and child support. So I'm surviving, I guess. The days all blur together now. Wake up, coffee, work, microwave dinner, scroll through old photos of the kids, maybe video call them, cry, sleep, repeat. It's ironic, isn't it? That boredom, the same dull routine, was what made me so restless that I went looking for validation somewhere else. And now, back to square one. Chris doesn't speak to me unless it's about stuff like drop-offs, school forms, medical stuff. Every message from him is polite. Thanks for dropping off their school forms. Appreciate your prompt child support payment. The kids said they enjoyed your visit. Always kind, always calm, never cruel. He dismantled me without ever raising his voice. Sometimes I wonder if he's happy now. He probably is. He won in every way possible while I'm here in my tiny apartment, regretting everything, and still crying in my bathroom every day. I'll never move on from this. I won't, and I'll never ever forgive myself.